Let's go on to our next speaker. We can always have discussions along the way. We have with us Dr. AKILA RAMKUMAR, who's a senior consultant from Shankar Nethralaya, Chennai, who's going to talk on another very relevant topic, biometry, age of IOL and choice of IOL in pediatric patients. Yes? Dr. AKILA?
Hello. Am I audible, ma'am?
Yeah, you're audible. You can start sharing your screen.
Good evening, and I would like to thank the organizers for giving me this opportunity to talk on IOL issues in pediatric cataracts.
We can't hear you. Dr. AKILA?
Yes.
You have not started talking yet, no? Okay.
Can you hear me now, ma'am?
Yeah, now we can hear you. Yeah.
Okay. So, as a pediatric ophthalmologist, I think our aim would be to implant an intraocular lens in a child unless otherwise. So the reason being, it provides a stable retinal image, it produces minimal anisoconia, and it provides a permanent optical correction. So, but unlike in an adult, there are various issues, challenges, or other concerns when you think of implanting an intraocular lens in a child. The reason being, the child is still growing. So you will expect a rapid refractive change. There is a huge myopic shift which happens. And of course, the technique of doing your biometry, axial length measurement, and keratometry is going to be a little tougher.
Your slides are not changing at all. Dr. AKILA?
Yes, ma'am.
We are on the first slide only. It's okay. Maybe you're introducing or you're changing.
No, I don't know. I think I'm having.
Change the slide on the screen. Don't use your keypad.
Okay. Is it changing now, ma'am?
No.
No, it's not.
Dr. AKILA, can you just stop share for a minute and then reshare?
Yeah, I'll do that then.
Now reshare, please.
Is it changing now, sir?
Yeah,
Yes, moved.
Yeah, it is.
Okay. Okay. So I was talking about the various issues or the challenges in children. So I would like to approach this topic in a stepwise pattern. Like to start with, whether do we really need to implant an IOL in a child? If so, what is the exact age at which you would like to implant an IOL? How shall we do a biometry? The technique, how different is that? And then what formula do you choose for calculating the IOL power? And how much of undercorrection or otherwise, what would be your target refraction? And what would be your, IOL to be implanted? So now the $1 million question in pediatric cataract is, should we really implant an IOL? And if so, what is the cutoff age? So you still have a debate which is still going on. Until date, there is no consensus among the pediatric cataract surgeons. The reason being, there is no robust evidence in literature on this subject. And this was evident from the Delphi study. And the robust, what we have, evidence that we have is the IATS. This was a randomized controlled trial which was done on infants with unilateral cataract. And they went on to recommend that in a child who's more than 7 months of age, as long as the axial length and the corneal diameter are well within the expected range, you can still go ahead and implant an intraocular lens. But it's better to avoid IOL implantation in children lesser than 7 months of age. The reason being, the visual outcome in both the groups was comparable, and there was no advantage in implanting an intraocular lens. Rather, it was associated with more of an adverse effect. And these children actually needed secondary surgeries due to visual axis opacification. And this rate was relatively very high. It's around 72% versus 16% in those children who were left aphakic and treated with contact lenses. So now we have other evidences which support implanting an intraocular lens in children lesser than a year. We have the LVPI study done by Dr. Ramesh Kekunia. And this study went on to say that primary intraocular lens implantation in children lesser than 6 months of age is relatively safe. And they found that it had a relatively favorable visual outcome. And at another study, that is the IOL study under 2 years of age, again went on to say, even though they did not look at the complication rates or the visual axis opacification, they found the visual outcome as comparable between the two groups. That is the ones who were left aphakic, and this was again done on bilateral cataracts. So then we have this study done by Vasavada et al., who again, the average age group of these children was 6 months. And this again was bilateral aphakic and bilateral pseudophakic children. And they again went on to say that the visual outcome and the adverse effects were comparable between the two groups. And this was again the study which was done in Chandigarh. And this studies showed that there was a lower incidence of adverse events even in children who were implanted with IOL in lesser than 1 year of age. So if you were to ask whether to implant an IOL, of course, proper selection of children and in experienced hands, it is okay to go ahead and implant an intraocular lens, provided the corneal diameter is at least 9 millimeters and the axial length is more than 18 millimeters. Now coming to the next challenge, that is the biometry measurement. So of course, it is not that easy as in an adult to get a biometry. And in certain children lesser than 3 years who do not cooperate without the anesthesia, when you're doing a biometry under GE, then there is going to be loss of fixation, which might contribute to the refractive surprises in the postoperative period. And an axial length of even 1 millimeter variation can contribute to 2.5 diopters of a refractive surprise. And again, keratometry reading also can cause a surprise in your postoperative refraction, and more so because these children usually have shorter eyes, and this gets exaggerated when the axial length is going to be smaller. Now, as far as biometry in an adult is concerned, we usually prefer the optical biometry, but as far as pediatric cataract is concerned, we are still more conventional. And we follow the ultrasound-based E-scan, and between applanation E-scan and the immersion, and both has its own advantages and disadvantages. So there is a disadvantage of applanation being it causes a little bit of corneal compression as children have a lesser of scleral rigidity. This might cause a unpredictable postoperative refraction. But when it comes to immersion, even though it is superior, the technique is going to be more cumbersome, and the technical aspect of it needs more practice. So if you compare these two biometry, both have got its own disadvantages or errors. There is like inundation of the cornea, as well as the orientation of the probe. If it's not going to be perpendicular, both can result in errors. So now this was a study which actually compared these two techniques, and they found that the contact technique, that is applanation, was significantly shorter. That is, the axial length measured by this technique was relatively shorter. So immersion, even though it is superior because of the technical nuances, it's not a preferred choice. Now comparing the optical versus your conventional or your immersion technique, this again, even though optical biometry might be superior to immersion, it has its limited role, because considering children, you do not expect that much of a cooperation as you expect in an adult. And of course, the morphology of the cataract, the density of the cataract, and the cortical cataract usually might result in a few errors in your prediction. And coming to keratometry reading, because a few of these children lesser than 3 years, you might think of doing a keratometry under general anesthesia, and fixation may not be there. But this study actually compared the Rogers et al., which was published in JAPOS. They compared the keratometry reading under general anesthesia, and they felt that it was, it did not give any variation, even though it was done under general anesthesia. Now, the next is your IOL calculation or the formula. What do you choose? Now, again, as far as pediatric cataract is concerned, the current formulae are all based on the AC depth and from the manufacturer's A constant. If you can modify that, and the effective lens position in a child is not the same as that you expect in an adult, and the depth of the anterior chamber, the dynamics of the PC contraction, all these things can cause variations in your predictive errors. And various formulas have been tried in children, and there are studies which actually compare these formulas in children. And I would just like to tell you a few studies. And this was way back in 2005. This study actually done by David and Pager. They found that SRK2 provided the least variable of the predictive error. And this was followed by another study which was published in 2010. And this suggested that Hofer's Q gave minimum predictive error. And now following that, again in 2012, LVPI study by Dr. Ramesh K. Kune again found that SRK2 gave the minimum predictive error in pediatric cataracts. And SN Calcutta study, again, This showed that both SRK2 and SRKT both had a least predictive error. And the 2016 the Vasavada study again showed that SRK2T and Holiday 2, they provided the least predictive error. So it's still been evolving over a period of time. There have been variations in the formulae, what you choose, but what we, the preferred practice pattern in our institute is we follow the SRK2 for the pediatric patients, unless the axial length is really small, where we take the Hofer skew. Now, how do you set your target refraction and how much do you undercorrect in a child? As Dr. Love was telling, you choose a hyperopia where you expect the least refractive error once a child becomes an adult, but then that hyperopia needs to be balanced with the risk of amblyopia in a child. But again, the target refraction, there are a lot of things that needs to be considered, including the age of onset, the ethnic considerations. All these things need to be taken into consideration before you think of your target refraction. Now, the target refraction, what we follow is the NED's guideline. That is the rule of 7, where as a 7-year-old, you expect 0 hyperopia. And if the child is going to be 6 years, you anticipate, think of leaving the child hyperopic by +1. And for a 5-year-old, it's +2, 4-year-old +3, and 3-year-old, it's +4.
1 minute left now.
And this was a study which was again done by LVPI, the validation of the guidelines of the NED's recommendations. And this study went on to 47.6% of the children, they achieved a refraction within 1 diopters. And almost 87% of these children had a refractive error of within 2 diopters. So these guidelines may achieve a good or acceptable refractive error at around 7 years of age. Now, the intraocular lenses in children, or the long-term effects, whether implanting an intraocular lens actually modifies the growth of the eye or not. This study showed that there was no significant retardation or acceleration of the axial growth just because you implant an intraocular lens. And again, but this was another study which was done by Dr. S.K. Rao, and what he found was there was a significant myopic shift which occurred. And this again was more pronounced as if the child was relatively younger, or the IOL was implanted at a younger age. But then you have the IATS, which found that the rate of the myopic shift occurs very rapidly in the first 1.5 years of life. But if you look at the child over a period of time at 5 years or so, the myopic shift is almost comparable. And this again, intervention or doing a cataract surgery in a child, whether it really interferes with the growth of the eye, it did not show much of a change. Now, I think which IOL to choose, I think Dr. Lau has already spoken, overview of this. Now, what we usually expect is what you prefer is a single piece hydrophobic acrylic lens. And when you don't have an intact bag and you still need to go in and implant an IOL in a child, you prefer the 3-piece acrylic hydrophobic lens. And always avoid silicone or hydrophilic acrylic lenses, as you told, that the postoperative inflammation and the PC opacification rates would be relatively higher. And PMMA is not a bad option in pediatric cataracts. Now, the controversial topics is multifocal and option in children. It has its own pros and cons. In selected children, you can still plan, but provided, the child is cooperative enough to implant. And IOL decentration in children can, because of the fibrosis and other things, decentration is going to be more common, and that would produce halos, glare, and deterioration in the quality of the image. So you need to weigh the pros and cons before you consider a multifocal IOL in a child. And it is still controversial because you do not know whether these multiple images are potentially amblyogenic. And of course, as I told, it can, the PC opacification, the tilt and decentration is something which needs to be considered before you jump into multifocal IOLs in children. Now, then again, can torics be implanted in children? Of course, in selective cases, you can still implant a toric intraocular lens. And against aspheric versus spheric, there was a study which was done which compared these two lenses, and they found that the contrast sensitivity in children who were implanted with aspheric IOL lenses actually showed significantly better contrast sensitivity. practice pattern would be to implant a single piece hydrophobic acrylic foldable lens. But in selective cases, multifocal torics or aspherics can be considered. So the take-home message would be IOL can be implanted in infants provided the corneal diameter and the axial length are within the expected range. And you should know that the myopic shift is faster in younger infants after cataract extraction. And axial length seems to be the major determinant factor in the myopic shift. And pseudophakic eyes grow at the same rate as that of the normal eyes. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Akila. Dr. Ramesh, I have a question for you. How would you decide on undercorrection if it is unilateral cataract and the other eye is normal?
Yeah, in unilateral cataract, I will go as much as possible on the emmetropic side. Unless some of the patients who are highly myopic, there I might do some correction. Because principle here is, even if you give undercorrection, you don't want to create so much of anisometropia. Because in an infant, they are not going to really patch. I'm talking about infantile and toddler age group. Older age group, there is no question. We have to go towards emmetropia. But infants and toddlers, I will not undercorrect as much as I do for bilateral cataract. Reason being, I don't want to create more anisometropia. I will go towards emmetropia side because in the future, even if there is a myopic shift, I can do a LASIK or anything because at this stage, vision is crucial. That's my philosophy in unilateral cataract.
Now, I know about your paper about SRK2 being the way to go, but now present day with the Barrett's answering the adult cataracts or extremes of axial lengths, wouldn't you revise your thoughts about considering Barrett's for your pediatric cataracts too?
Yeah, Barrett's and all the newer formulas, it's much better than the other older theoretical or regressive formula. But in pediatric, whatever you do, we are fighting against a war. The war is dynamic change in the axial length as well as corneal. When you add to that the effective lens position, ELP is very, very important for this, all this. ELP, I cannot predict. While it is excellent for adult, I still don't think we need. I'm not saying we should not stop here. We need to have some kind of usage of artificial intelligence or whatever. We need to use it. We need a better formula. But at this point of time, I still see there are prediction error is going to be there in whatever we use because of this war called dynamic nature of a child's eye. That's the main thing I would say. But having said that, we have a significant scope for improvement in children. Sumita, you are saying something? Yeah, go ahead.
We just analyzed our data using Barrett's. We, of course, back calculated using Barrett's and we compared it with SRK and we did not find any great difference. And we used something around more than 100 eyes. So, yeah. So, prediction errors where we used only APE or absolute prediction error as our outcome measure and we did not find any great difference between SRK-T or 2 and
Sumita, did you have a different age group? It's a wonderful thing to know about it. You had a mixture of groups.
We looked at it under 6 years for everyone, almost 2 to 6. We did not look at really young children, but we looked at say 2 to 8 was our target age group. It's not published yet, but we did analyze, and of course, back calculation is something which a lot of people agree and disagree on that, but that's the way if you want to look at a newer formula versus a established formula, then we really did not find any significantly difference between APE between either group.
Yeah, main reason for children is that growth, change in the ELP, because of vitrectomy, when you do it, effective lens position can change after some time. And of course, they are all dependent on anterior chamber depth. Surgeon's factor cannot be considered in pediatric eyes. What we can do it for adults cannot be really extrapolated. That's the whole thing.
And you may do it for that time, but you are not going to, it is not going to be permanent. Your lens position itself changes so much over a period of time.
Do these intermediate vision lenses like eye-hands and all make any sense? I feel it doesn't as I hear the conversation going on, but just one sentence. from you all?
There isn't any long-term data with eye-hands, even in adults. So I think in children, the idea is to not to use the lens which is of the newest, but one which has proven its track record over years. Unfortunately, that's because children, they are going to live with your surgery for 80 years, if not more. So I think with more data, definitely, yes, definitely.
What is the consensus about aspheric lenses?
I think aspheric, again, people have used IQ lenses. IQ lenses probably have been used pretty frequently. No financial interest here. But again, data is not available to review independently. If you are going to look at evidence-based medicine, nobody has published it. Anecdotally,
in pediatric cataract, we have not reached aspheric, so there's no question of eye hands or.
With target refraction, which is such high hyperope, I don't think that asphericity is doing too much good.
What is your view on this?
Now, what is the role of customized lenses? I know each of the topic here is going to be highly debatable, but some kind of information to the general attendees, like that you would not advise cutting of haptics in this age group. Would you advise customized lenses in microcorneas? But does it make sense? Something categoric, final. I don't want the webinar to end with only questions for all of us.
I think regarding customized lens, it is not very commonly used. At least I have used in the child with double crystalline lens. That was a customized lens. I have used in child with boob-ophthalmos. Few of the children with boob-ophthalmos with cataract. There you can use customized lens, but by and large, not in every situation.
Yeah, I suppose the prognosis of these microcorneas itself is so poor that why would you put a customized lens on top of it to challenge it, right?
In microcornea as well as micro-ophthalmos, that remains one of the contraindication for implanting IOL.
Yes,
Dr. Akila said that 18 millimeter axial length and I think 9 millimeter corneal diameter. But as far as I am concerned, I use IOL in child where axial length is 17 or more and corneal diameter is 9.5 or more. That is what I do.
Murli, you have anything to ask? I seem to be asking too much.
No, I have a question for the expert panel, like Kalpana Madam, Jagatram sir, and Ramesh sir. I mean, what is the age group in which you would try toric lenses?
I think in children, usually we wait till 6 years because there are several studies that there is stabilization of the whatever astigmatism, even many times, but there is a study. So I use more, I have used 5 years or more. In very young child, I have not used. In very small, between 1 to 5 years, I have not used by and large toric IOL.
Dr. Ramesh?
Sorry, go ahead, Ramesh.
Go ahead, please.
Yes,
Go ahead, please.
I have done usually above the age of 10 years. I have done maybe around 4 or 5 patients we have done about the age of 10 years, not before that.
Yes. Next.
I don't do toric lenses, but in older children, I think it can be considered if because the wound healing, everything is quite good. I don't have a personal experience of doing a lot of toric lenses.
In buphthalmos, does the bag diameter increase? I mean, how do you find out? Like in buphthalmos with really large corneas, let's say 14, 16 millimeter, would the bag diameter be more, and would you need a customized lens?
No, I don't think bag diameter changes there. It's mostly the anterior segment and corneal enlargement. So you don't need corneal, you don't need a special lens. Most of the time your standard 13.5 millimeter lens will do.
Only thing is in highly myopic or ophthalmic eyes, as the bag size remains same, if your globe enlarges, it can stretch the zonules. There is a chance that in the future, the same thing happens in Buftalmos or Stickler syndrome or whatever. Similar thing can happen where the lens can dislocate in the long run. So as Sumita said, I think it's not about the size, it's about the stability of the lens. It's very important.